tag is written just like the start tag, except there will be a forward slash before the tag name. And the start and end tags are also called opening tags and closing tags. So if you see the bottom example that we provided, it's going to always be, for the most part, it's always going to be like tag name, then content, and then forward slash tag name. Sometimes it could also just be one tag name, and that's only for specific types of things like images and stuff like that. So this is the basic HTML structure, and if you declare, you can declare it as a doc type, and then you will have 3 different main elements inside your HTML structure, which is the overall HTML. And then you can include the head and the body. And so in the head, you can put in content or tag names that you think are important, but they will be running on the background and won't be serving on the front end page, except the title. In the title of the head section, that was the only thing that will appear on the web page itself. Additionally, for the body section, it's all going to be content that you want appear on your web page. So in more details, you can copy down this as like a note. This is the HTML tag structure. And if you, inside of the HTML, the tags, you would have like the head and the body structures. And the head, as I said before, will be the stuff or like the tags that you want for the back end of the website and for the title, of course. And then the body is all for the content specifically. So some basic HTML tags we want to teach you before we do the mini project later on is, here are a couple of them that you might need to know for the future as well. So a text header, all right, it's going to be H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6 tags. And basically what that means is they're just different sizes, right? And so like each one indicates from ascending order or descending order, like the size of each like text you want to have for that header. So, and these are also front tag, opening and closing tags as well. So like H1, and then you put like, this is a title, and then forward slash H1, and it'll show like a gigantic header saying, this is a title. Additionally, there's also a P tag for a paragraph. So you can have like a gigantic like piece of text, and it'll enclose it inside of a paragraph text. And that's also an opening and closing tag. For the horizontal ruler or a separator, you can use that as well to separate between individual texts. For the link, what you can use is an anchor tag, and that'll have like that can be used as getting a hyperlink and putting it onto your website. And we'll discuss more about that in the next slide or so. Same with the list and image. And for the list, what we would do is we would have 2 different types, all right? So for the list, we would have like a data structure in which it would have like a specific content or list elements, which is the LI that is mentioned here. And there's 2 different types of lists, an unordered list and an ordered list. And I'll talk about that in the next slide as well. And the image tag is like the one single tag, not the opening and closing tag. This is the way we can incorporate images into our website. And for the image tag, there's also going to be like a source attribute in which you can add like specific types of images and whatnot. And then finally, there's also the divider and the text span that's useful in terms of like creating space and divisions between your websites. So to expand more on the images, the lists, and the links, we do have the image tag, of course. So the image source equals the URL, as I mentioned before. So the source is an attribute, and then that source will, if you connect a URL to that link, it'll retrieve that specific image source and it'll display it within your website. There are also other attributes to add, including like the width. So you can add like a specific dimension for the size of the image, or you could also, if the image does not load properly onto your screen, have you guys ever seen like that text that goes like possible 3 trees and a person playing on the bike, person riding his bike? So basically that's what it was. That's what it is. You specify like what type of text or like give a description of what that picture is if it doesn't load up. Additionally, there's also the list, as I mentioned before. So to specify more on what unordered and ordered lists are. So the unordered list this is the basic data structure. So it's like UL and then /UL at the end. And inside the content of that part, you would have the list elements, including like first item, second item, third item. So it would list in a list saying first item, second item, and then third item. And then for the ordered type, it's going to be OL, and then it's the same thing as the unordered list. However, there's an attribute called type. And in the type section, you can specify a certain type of numbering convention or lettering convention. So in this case, if you say type equals 1, it'll specify 1, 2, 3 in that order. Or if you do A, you can do A, B, C, like that. And finally, we go into the links. And the links is specifically, as I said before, it's about the hyperlinks. So you would use the A anchor tag, as I mentioned before. And you would also use another attribute called href, in which you'd retrieve that specific type of link. And it would specify saying a link to Google. So now that we move on from HTML and you guys have gotten the basics, right? So let's go ahead and move into CSS. And CSS is more of like the design and like getting like the better look or feel of the website. So what does it stand for? Well, it's cascading style sheets. It also defines how to display specific HTML elements, and external style sheets can save a lot of work and time. A CSS file allows to separate websites HTML content from its style. So you can also like the CSS like file will like store all the information about how to design the structure and all of that. While the HTML just gives you like it gives you like instructions, like you can display instructions on like where certain things will go. The CSS file will instruct on like how that structure would look. That's how you can interpret it. So how would you incorporate CSS into HTML? Well, there are three different methods of using CSS. So first off is the external style sheet, which I personally use the most, is when the style is applied to many pages. So what you would do is, like if you can see like right here, like the circle here, you would mention like href equals mystyle.css. So you're getting that specific CSS external file and you're attributing it to this specific link. So whatever whatever the CSS file instructs for that link, it's going to give it to that HTML structure and it's going to display whatever features you want it to have. Same with the internal style sheet. It's going to be just a little bit different, except instead of using an external file, you would have it within the single document of the HTML structure as well, except it would be attributed in a style tag with an opening and closing style, as you can see in the circles here. And these are some of the types of like attributes you could specify, like the paragraph text or like the body text. And you can say like margin left 20 pixels to the left, or you could say like background image for the body. You could say like a specific URL and then it'll retrieve that link and stuff like that. You could do so many things with internal or external. It's your choice, honestly. For the inline styles, it's to use inline styles is to use the style attribute in the relevant tag. So the style attribute can contain any CSS property. So instead of using like the style sheets right here, right? Instead, you would use while you're typing out like your HTML structure, like your data tag, what you could also do is use an attribute called style, and you would specify what type of feature you'd want it to have. So for this paragraph tag, right? You would specify like, oh, the style is equal to this specific color. And then you would also specify that the paragraph text would have to go left 20 pixels. You can do as many things as you want, honestly, but just know that there are three different methods, including external, internal, and inline styles. So there are certain instances in which if we have these three methods, right? There are often conflicts that coders or like HTML coders go through whenever adding these types of styles. So if you add more than one style and they conflict, the cascading order will follow. So first it'll look into the inline style, like inside an HTML element. Second, it'll look into the internal style sheet in the head section, and then it'll look at the external style sheet. Last thing it'll do, if all three are not used, then it'll just go into the browser default settings. So let's go more into the CSS syntax. So a CSS rule has two main parts, the selectors and the declarations. So the selector is specifically like the tag that you want to include, like the H1 header tag, or use a paragraph tag, or any sort. And when you specify that specific selector, then you are indicating that for every type of selector, like for every type of H1, you want to declare that it has a, for that specific property, the color like blue. Or if you're trying to specify a specific type of font size, you would say 12 pixels, anything of the sort. So for a specific example, as you can see at the bottom here, it's going to be H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. And it's going to say like, okay, I want this color for all of these headers, or I want this font family for all of these headers. And it's going to attribute all of those styles into the specific header. So it's not only just one selector, you could also use multiple selectors as well. So that's the cool thing about specifying in declaration of CSS. So two important parts of CSS are the ID and class selectors. So the ID selector is used to specify a style for a single unique element. And the ID selector uses the ID attribute of the HTML element. For example, hashtag selector ID property colon value. All right. And the ID class ID selector is only for single unique elements. Remember that. But in the class selector, it's for a group of elements. So the class selector is used to specify a style for a group of elements, and this class selector uses the HTML class attribute defined with a dot or period instead of a hashtag symbol. So in this case, it would be selector dash class and then property to specific value. There's supposed to be a space here, a dot here, but basically for like each class or for each ID, what you're trying to do is you're kind of like using a selector and you're specifying a property value. So it's declaring and then value, just as I mentioned before. And then finally, there's something called the CSS box model. So in CSS, the term box model is used when talking about like design and the layout. The CSS box is essentially a box that wraps around HTML elements, and it consists of margins, borders, padding, and actual content. So think of CSS as like the encapsulation or the design and layout, as I mentioned before. So here's some examples of CSS in code. All right. So to start off, like hashtag sign up dash form, right? So you're having a selector ID. It's called sign up form. And whenever you go into the HTML like field, you would specify saying, okay, like you called the sign up form. What does the sign up form have? So some of the features that sign up form has includes the background color of that specific color. You could also say like the border radius, display, the margining and the padding and the width. I would recommend that you note down these specific types of like CSS editing fields because these are pretty important. Um, so basically these are the main critical ones that most people you would use for CSS whenever trying to edit their website design. Another example is the hashtag signup form dot field group. So what you're doing here is you're gonna be calling out the you're calling out the selector ID, of course, right? But you're also calling out a specific class, which is the field group, which is indicated using the dot. And so if you call that out in the HTML data structure and say it's hashtag signup form dot field group, what would happen is you would have the display and the padding and the width updated for any of those HTML structures that are called with dot field group. Additionally, for the ones later on, you could also specify like label, like if you call out the label one, you could say like those specific types of features, and then same with like the other ones. So all of these are mentioning how the selector ID works. And then if you want to use in conjunction with the class, like a specific class, you would specify right after the ID. And you would get all of those attributes like the padding, the width, height, and all of that. Okay. So now after CSS, let's go into more of the functionality. So of trying to get like functionality in our web page. So what would we use is JavaScript. So JavaScript is a scripting language. A scripting language is a lightweight programming language, of course. The JavaScript is a programming code that can be inserted into HTML pages and JavaScript inserted into HTML pages can be executed by all modern web browsers, which means it is versatile. So how to incorporate JavaScript into HTML? So to insert a JavaScript into an HTML page, we must use the tag like script. And this tells where the JavaScript starts and ends. So if you guys recall what I mentioned before about the not inline, internal style sheets for the CSS where I said style and then / style. That's how you would call for the CSS. It's the same thing with JavaScript. You're specifying script and then / script, and then you would do all of your code, all of your JavaScript code within that within those open and closing tags. So alert my first JavaScript. So it'll alert the document page my first JavaScript. Like it'll show a pop-up. And then you can also incorporate JavaScript using the body, like writing document.write. And then you can, so in this case, for the document.write, you can specify like, okay, this is HTML code that I want to write into the document page. And this is pretty useful if ever you're trying to like have an interactive website. So if you're saying like, if someone clicks like a submit button and then you would feel like document.write, this is a heading or like, this is the correct answer. And it would specify saying, okay, this is the correct answer. That's a pretty good scenario when you would use the JavaScript like document.write or like alerts or symbols, something like that. So using external JS files, you can also, instead of using like the internal file, you can also use an external file, just as CSS as well. And scripts can also be placed in external files. External files can contain code to be used by several different web pages. External JavaScript files have the file extension .js instead of like CSS.css. To use an external script, point to the .js file in the source attribute of the tag. So just like an image attribute tag, like href or anything like that, you would specify saying, hey, okay, so for the script tag, I would like to specify to extract the files myscript.js in that script opening and closing tag. And what that would do, it would go and call out that specific JS file, and it would bring it back to you with all of the JS functionality for, that is specified in that external file, and it'll bring it into your HTML body structure. So some other JS functions that you guys should probably know or take note of include like finding HTML elements by ID. So you can do document.getElement by ID. You can get finding HTML elements by tag name, same thing. You can find elements by name, so get elements by name. And you could also get get elements by class. So these are all specified for like the HTML attributes and the CSS attributes. And as I mentioned before about writing into HTML output, you should do document.write, and then you would specify like the specific HTML tags and the content itself. So I'll give you a couple seconds to write those down if you want. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So some more JS functions that you guys should probably know. Some more JS functions you should probably know. Changing HTML content. So just as I was explaining before about the interactive website, you can use JavaScript to manipulate the content of HTML elements. And this is a very powerful functionality, of course. So if you get, so in this case, the example shown here, we would get x equals document.getElement by ID, so demo. All right, so we find that specific element, which is demo, and then x.innerHTML, we would change the content of the x variable, and it would change that specific ID to saying hello JavaScript. Same with changing HTML content. You can also change the HTML styles by changing the style of an HTML element. It's a variant of changing an HTML attribute. So in this case, same thing, x equals document.getElement ID. Demo. So you get that element demo, and then you would go over here and you would say x.style.color. So you're basically saying okay, now I want to get the specific style that the X is specified on, and then get the color attribute of that specific class. And you would say hashtag whatever color you like, and that would change the color of that specific element. Um, Now that we go on to here, so here's some more examples of JS code being used in its functions. So functionality is crucial in JS code. So in this case, this is validating a form. So you would get the variable and then you get the name value. So say someone is, um, this is an example of someone incorporating their name and their email and password. And this is giving you like on a website, it'll be like the password is too long, or I mean password is too short, or it doesn't have enough uppercase letters, or it doesn't have enough special characters. You could use all of that using JS functionality. And in this case, it'll pass in, it'll get the variable name value, so it'll get those values, and then it'll go through a method saying verify name value. So this method or function would go through this functionality, and it would return true or false based on the specific conditions that it needs to meet. And if it doesn't, then it'll go through here and it'll say alert invalid name, or it'll go like return false and everything like that. But if it returns true, it'll just pass off everything. So that's the power of JS code functionality. Now you can like limit the amount of code that needs to be run because of functionality. And JavaScript does run similar to like compatibility of like other types of languages like Java code or like Python, C++, and any sort. So summary, remember that these are only the basics. Like we have only scratched the surface on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and there's so much more content to learn from. HTML serves as a declarative language that have various markup tags. CSS stands for cascading style sheets that provide for the design and look. JS is a lightweight scripting language that gives functionality. So remember those three different things here. And also remember to not stop here, okay? We would probably teach you more about including like the JS syntax, like the jQuery, or like more advanced HTML tags and like using CSS attributes and styles. But we really want to give you more of an interactive experience with our mini project. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Pranay here, and he's going to be teaching you guys about how to create a mini project in live demo. So for desktop users, please use Notepad++. And if you're a Mac user like me, use Sublime Text Editor. That works pretty well for me as well. And Pranay, you can take it from here.
Right, thank you, Abhinav. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Abhinav. So before we get started, I'm going to show you guys what we're going to be. Abhinav, I think you need to unshare.
Yeah. Wait, could you get a better mic? It's kind of like blurring out for you. And Scotty, if you're there, hello.
I think Scotty's taking a quick break right now, but yeah, Pranay, your mic is kind of muffled.
Okay, 1 second.
Also, Pranay, I stopped screen sharing, so what you can do is just click screen share, the green button.
Is it good now? Is it still muffled?
A little bit, but it's okay. Try the screen sharing, please.
All right, can you guys hear me? Is it better or is it still muffled?
Yeah, this is good.
Okay. So before we get started with the mini project, I just want to demo what we're going to do really quickly. I have the application open here, and what it is a simple countdown timer. Okay, and what it is whenever we're going to take a break, we're going to specify how many seconds we're going to be at that break, and we just want to display a countdown timer here. And we also want to show what time we'll be back at. So it's a very simple project, but it's a good start. So if I exit out of here, I'm going to be using this code editor. And it's not working on my system, so I'll be using this. You can use. So let me just create a couple of files which we will use to code. The first one is our HTML file, which it's a good naming thing to name your HTML file index. I have no idea why, but we're going to be using external files for our CSS and our JavaScript, like Abhinav said. So I'm going to be creating a CSS file called styles.css, and the last one will be our external JavaScript file, which I'll be called script.js. So we'll first focus on index.html, and we'll finish off our view of the application, and then we'll come back to scripts and our styles.js. So the first thing, and disclaimer, I don't expect you don't have to understand everything right now. It's just trying to show you guys how what you can build with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So the first thing in our HTML file that we always have to do is specify that we're in an HTML file. So we do that with this doc type tag, and we also need to end this doc type tag. So this specifies that the current the code that's going to be underneath this HTML tag is going to be HTML code. Another thing that I like to do is specify what language we're going to use. Not a lot of people do this, but it's just something that I'm used to doing. So I'm going to specify English. And we already wrote HTML tag right here. Okay. So Abhinav mentioned that in a HTML we need to have we have a head and we have a body. So the head is going to take care of our little browser tab. It's going to have the title of the page, and it's also going to redirect us to our CSS and our JavaScript. So let's first create a head tag, which specifies is going to do that. And we're now going to talk about a tag called meta, which will right. So this is just a meta tag. It sort of is describing the encoding of our text, which will be displayed on our HTML page. You don't have to. I don't know the actual name of the UTF, what it stands for, but just remember it's trying to encode our text that is going to be viewed. The next thing we're going to do is create a title, and the title is this aspect right here, right? It's going to be called countdown clock. And some people get confused that title is is it the title of a web page or what? But it's the little name in the browser. So we're going to create this tag, and I guess we'll just call it countdown clock. Countdown clock. Okay. So, and then now, in our head, it's usually good practice to put our external style CSS folder, CSS file, right? So we're going to link this external CSS folder that we have right here with our current HTML view file. So to do that, we need to use this tag called link, which was saying, let's link the style sheet that is in our current working directory, which is in the location of styles.css. So all of our CSS code is going to be in this style.css file. All right, so I think we can end our head tag for now. Maybe later we can add something to our head, but for now, let's start off with the body. And so the body is basically everything that is going to be viewed by the user. It's going to be the core substance of our web page. So the first thing we want to do is create a section tag, which will basically specify all of the different input buttons we have right here. So we want a section tag that'll allow us to style these different buttons and show us that that this part exists. So, and for now, I'm going to specify that it's one of this CSS class. We're going to be creating this CSS class, which I'm writing right here later, but I'm just doing it right now to show the view how it is. So now we need to create a div tag, and like Abhinav said, the div tag is a divider, so it allows us to group different tags together, or different, in our case, buttons, input buttons, and group them into one section. Okay, so we're going to create this div tag, and in my in the CSS code, it's going to be called, let's just say, countdown clock controls. Okay, because we are controlling these buttons are controlling our clock. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna write this this CSS code later. And okay, now we have to actually create these buttons. So we have a section where we can write our buttons, and now we have to actually make these input buttons. So let's create some button tags. For now, so these values are like IDs that we can use in our to connect to different HTML tags or to our CSS file. Okay, so the first value is going to be the 20 button, which is going to have, it's going to show that it's 20 seconds. The next button is going to be our 5-minute tag, right? Okay, can be for 5 minutes. So we're gonna be talking about it in seconds. We're gonna say it's gonna be 300 seconds, and we're gonna call this as work 5. Okay. Next tag, next button is going to be the 15-minute button, which we're going to call it as 15. The next one is our, let's say, 12, our 20-minute timer, which is going to be max. And the last one is going to be our lunch break. And this is going to say for 1 hour. This is going to be for 1 hour, but it's going to just be called lunch break. So we have our our div tags and our buttons to show that that exists. The next thing we need is, see how there's this custom input right here? I can specify how many minutes. So say I want 45 minutes. It'll show up right here that there's 45 minutes. So for this needs to be an input tag. And like Abhinav mentioned, how some tags don't have closing brackets. This is one of those tags. So this is going to be an input field, and it's going to be of the type text. And we're going to, for our ID name, it's going to be called interval. And the placeholder value, or like if I remove this, here also says enter minutes. This is called the placeholder value. So this placeholder value is going to be called enter minutes. And yes, this is our input tag. So I didn't close this tag because it's one of those special tags where you don't need to close it, just like the image tag or the input. So now that the buttons are done, so we have some buttons here, and these buttons are done. Now we need to code this clock here, and we also need a code clock that says backpack. Okay, so let's do that. We'll create a new div, which will group this countdown clock and the backpack. And we're going to create a CSS class called, in the future, called clock wrapper. And it's also going to be, so this one CSS class is going to have another div, which is going to have a CSS class that we'll create in the future called clock. And initially, on the view of the file of the HTML, we're going to just say it as 0000. Okay. So on the view, it's going to be that without any functionality. And we also need a backpack class, which will show us when we're going to read backpack. Okay. So, well, we've got every aspect of our HTML code because this is the view, right? We have our buttons and we have our countdown clock, and we also have when we're going to be back at. So that's good. Now we have to actually style this, but before that, I need to specify that I'm also going to use functionality. And to write functionality, we need to use JavaScript. So I need to specify here that I'm going to be using JavaScript like this. Okay. If I was to write my JavaScript in the same HTML file, I would do it. But because it's going to be in an external file, I need to specify that the source is in the script.js file. So we're going to be writing our JavaScript functionality in this script.js file. Okay. So that's good. So now I just want to show you guys how like basic HTML would look without any functionality, without any styling. So you see how we have all our values here, but it's a very ugly page, and we need to definitely style this page, make it pretty. So let's go back, and now we'll create our CSS code. So for our CSS code, we are going to first talk about, we're going to style our body. Okay, so all the buttons and everything is going to be in our body, and we need to make it a particular color. And I'm just going to stick with this color I have right now. So this is going to be of the body class. Okay, we're specifying the body class, and it has a height of 100 pixels. And don't worry too much about what all this stuff means, but just remember that like some CSS, for CSS, they have some attributes that are commonly used, and these are some of them. So so we need to align our items towards the center because we want our page to be the button and everything to be in the center, like because right now, if you look at it, it's towards the top and it's not in the center. So we want it to be in the center, and we also want it to be vertical. Okay, this actually specifies that it must be vertical. And I already picked this color beforehand, but this is a hexadecimal color that we're going to use, and I found it online somewhere. But just a great place to check your defined colors is called W3 Schools, called CSS Color Picker. And I just found some random color here, but you can copy the hexadecimal code like this. So this color is going to be 43, 4, oh, 0, 40, okay. So this is a code color, and the background of this body is this is a little bit advanced CSS, but it's just trying to show you that. Don't worry too much about it. Okay. And we also remember to always end your attributes with the semicolon. That's very important. So we're done with our body. Now we actually have to code our classes the way to specified here. So let's do the first class. The first class is called countdown. Right, so this is a class. And this class, we're going to specify that it has a height of, well, it's going to take the entire height, okay? And it's going to be this way. And it's going to be vertically stacked. Okay? So, and the next class we have to specify is our countdown clock control class. This class is going to actually style our buttons. And the first thing is we want each button to be about a 750 pixel width. And we want it to, this is, like I said, this is some different CSS tags, but we also wanted to start from the center, from the start. And it's going to be the same flex display, and it's going to be space between. So all of these are going to be space between each other. I'm reiterating it multiple times just like so people don't worry that this is some advanced like CSS things that you can look into further on your time. But then we want to also move it down a bit. So we need to decide how much margin we have to leave from the top. And we're going to specify that first. Okay. So we're good with our buttons. If we want, we can now just refresh it to see how it is with just these controls. So we saw that now all of it is to the center, and that we have some space in between. We still didn't, specify the class for this, but we will. And we also saw how our background changed, right? Okay. So the next thing we need to do is we also need to talk about, we need to color our actual like buttons. See how they're just really bland right now? We need to make them a little bit stylish here. So we're going to now code, we're going to style our countdown clock controls. And it's going to have some padding. Padding is what Abhinav showed, that like it's going to talk about the depth of the particular button, and it's going to be a depth of about 20 pixels. It's the background that we're going to use for these is I don't know. I think 120 is good. And 90. So this is just the RGB color. I'm just putting some random values in there. And we can even change it. Let's make it. Okay, so let's make them blue. So the next thing we need to do is we have some, like, we need to make the border radius. So this radius between this a little bit bold. So we're gonna specify the border radius as 3. But you see how every single aspect of your button and your CSS and your HTML page, you can style it however you want with CSS. I mean, you have a lot of options with what you can do, because the border radius is talking about one specific thing, but your height is, for example, talking about the whole general web page. So border aspect, we're gonna make it 10 pixels, and we're also gonna do some shadowing to it, and this is gonna be and between 0, 0, 0, and then 50.1. So guys, let's see how this. All right, so this shows this value right here, and now we got to actually style the buttons, which is going to be now the input. So now we're going to style the input right here, because now what we did is we just styled the entire section. Now we need to actually style the input button. So we'll say control and then particular input, and it's going to be, actually before that we will and that would be a border of 2 pixels. Ours to like make it hover like this. Okay, so we have this, we can make it hover like that. Say, and we'll change colors every time we hover. So you can look into more of how this actually and change the background. 255 for now. 255. We'll just make it one. And we got to end it. And the next one is going to be when the button is active. When the button is actually active, we're going to transform it and scale it up to about 1.1. And the reason I'm putting it in one line is because we're only using one attribute, so we don't need to space it out, and it's just a little bit more concise for our. The next thing is countdown. So, and some color. I'm just gonna specify it as let's say these colors. I don't think I'm just like memorize everything. These colors I've been like I use them really often, so that's why I'm. But usually I go to the HTML, the W3 Schools color picker, and I get the color from there. Okay, so and the margin is and now we need to specify the particular clock, which we are right here. Okay, and this clock is going to have a font size of 180 pixels, and we're going to be the backend class here. We're going to have a font size 22. Okay. So I think we're done with our CSS. Now, if we go back here to style it, so you see how it's like this. So one problem is the number is not in the center. So we will see why. Oh, because I need to add a global style right here that is saying for every single for all the styles right here, I need you to be in the center. So I'm going to specify like this: 0, adding 0, and it's going to be, so this is going to specify our border. Now, have you pressed page? Oh, for some reason. Alright, it's okay. I don't know why my thing is not in the center as it was before, but we can still write functionality on this without it being. So even though it's not perfect, for time, we're going to stick to our JavaScript now, and we understood that JavaScript is where we write our functionality, right? So we should be able to, whenever we click on a button right now, we should have a timer right here, and it should tell us that we should be back here. We should be back at this particular time. Okay? But right now, if you click on it, it doesn't do anything. Right? And if you enter in 15 minutes, it doesn't do anything. So let's get started on the JavaScript. So before we write functionality, I'm going to write some constant variables which we will be able to use later. And Alginov showed us how we can, to actually write JavaScript code, we need to be able to read and write with the document, or in our case, just the index.html. So to do that, we need to create some buttons which will actually control the behavior. Okay? And let's just start it. So the first variable is going to be called buttons, and it's going to be of the document. And we're going to be able to select all of the tags of the CSS tags, of the HTML tags, sorry, with the countdown that has the countdown controls, and it's of this button. Okay? So the button is going to be the functionality that writes logic and functionality for these buttons. That's the button variable. The next thing I'm going to so the next thing I'm going to do is write, like I put a comment here because I want everything to be in one line. So the next thing is the enter time, which is going to be the variable which allows us to enter the time for the custom input. The next one is going to be the actual clock, which is going to be this functionality. It's going to be the clock. The last one is the back act. See typo right here. So typos are really annoying because one simple error causes the entire page to lose control. So the next is for the back act. So these are some constants that we specify. And we also need a variable which allows us to count down, right? We need a variable that here, it should be able to count down like this. So we will specify that, and it's going to be called timer, right? Okay, so we talked about functions. I'm not talking about functions, and the first function we're going to write is going to be the start timer function. This is going to be the function where when we click on a button, it should start this timer, okay? And it should just start this timer. So it's going to be up. And the parameter, the input parameter we're going to send in is called second, okay? This second is going to is going to is going to show how many here. This is going to be the value. The next thing we're going to do is, because we want to reuse this function, and every time we click on this value, we need to be able to clear this timer so that when we click on this button, it should start at that particular time. Okay? So for that, I think JavaScript has a function that will allow us to clear the time, okay? And that will be this time. So this is an inbuilt JavaScript function. And now we need the particular, so because we want to talk about, for our backend variable, we need to talk about, we need to specify what is going to be backend. But we need to know our current time to be able to add the particular minutes that will be backend. So that's going to be a variable called now, and it's going to use the JavaScript function called date. it's going to use a JavaScript class called date, and this JavaScript class has a method called now. And this now method allows us to know what time it is now. Then the next thing is we need to know then. And the then variable is going to be the current time, which is now, which is specified as now, plus the seconds that we will input in our parameter, and then times 1,000. Okay? So, because seconds per minute, so we need to. And we will, in a bit, we're going to write this function. I'm just going to specify it right now to say that this is what's going to happen. This and display back at, we're going to, no, this is going to say the then, right? Because, and we're going to write this in a bit. Now we need to describe what this timer actually does. And this timer is going to use the JavaScript, function called set interval. Okay? And I don't know how many of you have learned JavaScript functions, but it's a little bit advanced stuff. But basically, it'll take in a parameter, and we're going to map each of these things into a variable. And the second left is going to show us seconds left is going to show us how many seconds left we have. So this is going to use the math class which we have in JavaScript, and this math is going to say how much we have, what is the next time, plus what is the current time, and we're going to divide all of this by 1,000 because it's going to be the second. And we need to write some functionality that says if the seconds left is less than 0, right, then we should clear the interval again. Okay? Because if the timer went all the way to 0, then we need to clear that timer. And then we're just going to return particular. The next thing is we need to, like I said, we're going to write this functionality a bit, but then we need to display how much time we have left, again, after we clear the particular control. Okay. So we're done with our start timer function. Now we're going to write our display time left. Okay. So this function, display time left, is going to show us, is going to take in how many seconds we have left, and it's going to have a variable called minutes. Minutes is, well, it's going to be how much seconds we have left divided by 60, because 60 is going to be time left is going to be an hours, and then seconds is going to be the minutes or the seconds left, the remainder of it, right? This is where we can use coding tricks to make our code a little bit shorter, right? So it's modulus 60, and modulus basically gives us the remainder of the particular function, the particular value, right? Whenever we divide something, we're going to get the remainder of that. And so now we need to actually display our value, right? So we have this clock variable, which we specified as this clock thing right here, clock ID. And this function is going to have a text text content is going to have a text content attribute. Okay, and this is a little bit advanced stuff. This is where you're going to be using formatting. This is called formatting, where we're going to view don't know too much about this. So this, all this is doing is showing us how much time we have, like the minutes in a second, right? But don't worry too much about these are backquotes, and this just shows we're inputting the particular minutes. Okay? So now we have to write our function for, we have to display our back. So this back at will take in then, and it's going to say that particular date of hour and this method and get hours is part of this date class. It's an inbuilt method, like I said before, and we also need the minutes, which is going to be okay. So right, it's really simple. Now we just have to display when we're back at, and we're going to use the same thing, same like format we used here. And this is going to say back at format time hours. Right, and it's also going to say, so I'm going to take this, which is going to be format time. That's the typos. Okay. So very simple. We're just talking about back at. Then we also need a function. So this format time, we have to write. We have to write functionality for this format time now, and this is going to be. It's going to take in that time, right? Which means whatever parameter we pass in, and this is going to. This is some. Like, don't worry too much. This is some logic operators that JavaScript has inbuilt. So if you don't understand what all this means, I'm just going to show you like what you can do and like how advanced you can get into it, and you can read more about it. But yeah. So that's the format time. And now we got to set number, which takes this number to be, right? Okay, so we have our main functions complete now. We have to add the functionality that says whenever we click on this button, we need to be able to listen to all of the functions we just wrote. Okay? And we specified this button variable, this button's constant here. And this button's constant is going to say, is going to be a for each loop, right? This is JavaScript specific code. Button dot, we're going to say add, it's going to be an event listener. So whenever we click, right, whenever we click on this, on that class, on that button that we specified, it's going to set second. Okay? Right, it's going to set the second. And whenever we enter the time, so the enter time is going to have an event listener, which whenever we have is key attributes that JavaScript helps us with, you know, for some event clicking, like when we click on a button, when we click on this with our mouse, or when we have keystrokes. This is how JavaScript helps. Okay, so for the most part, we're done. Actually, we're done. We should be done as long as there's no errors. But you know, whenever we code, we're always going to be error prone. Okay, so let's refresh this page and see if it works. So we had 20 seconds. Cool, it works. We have a time, we have a countdown that, you know, gives us how many seconds we have left. And we're going to see, also know when we're back at. So it's 15. It cleared the previous input, which was the time, and it's 15 minutes. Back at 6. If you say lunch break, we specify that for an hour, it's going to clear that previous 15 minutes and then for an hour, it's going to fill it here. And change this and this. And now we can have our, you know, so if you want to go really a weird number like 46 minutes, it's going to have 46 minutes before going back down. So, you know, I hope you understood at least the basic HTML and like, JavaScript. You know, this is some like a little bit more advanced stuff with the formatting and all of this, but I hope you understood like the basic how to call and how to specify an HTML class, and then call that HTML class in your style sheet in your CSS code, and be able to style your code like this, you know, and how to write functionality, you know, based on those classes you specify. So yeah, I think I'm done.
All right, thank you, Pranay. So that's the end of our workshop. Thanks for everyone who attended, and we hope you gained some knowledge about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We hope that you were able to get like a virtual experience as well as like knowledge of how to apply it in the real world. So thank you for attending, and we'll be signing off now.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you.